What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another Let's Chat episode. I am your host, Chris Corvan, and today we're chatting about the dark M.M. romance So I'll Know with author Sara Elisabeth. This is the third book in the Pacific Northwest Boys series, following a high-stakes entanglement between a businessman hiding his true self and the ghost from his past who finally steps into the light. This is going to be an amazing one. I can't wait to get into this. Sarah, how are we doing today?
So far so good. It's a Friday, so trying to get through, finish up the week.
That's totally how it goes. So we're just going to jump right into this. If anybody needs to learn more about you, I have done a couple interviews with you. So, I will link that in the description below because you're an amazing person. And it gives me watch time on other videos. So
as long as it helps us both.
You know what? Exactly. Okay, so let's just jump right into So I'll Know. For somebody kind of discovering this for the first time, how would you describe the dynamic between Marcus and Jeremy?
Well, they have a lot of push and pull. Marcus, as you said, is a kind of a businessman. He struggles with defining his sexuality and all the insecurities that come with that particular journey, and Jeremy has to weigh whether Marcus is worth disrupting his entire life. He's an out and proud queer man. He has lofty career goals. He has a lot of empathy for Marcus's situation because he went through as a kid, as coming out as a kid, but their attraction for each other is also very visceral. It's very quick, and I think that readers will definitely get swept along for the ride as the guys try and navigate their differences. So,
well, that's perfect. This is book 3 of the trilogy. What made this the right story to kind of close out the trilogy?
Well, the books were always about the Connor siblings. So it started out with Charlie, and then the next book had Sebastian, and this one has Marcus. So it was always going to be a trilogy. When I was writing my first book, Someday Away, I wasn't really sure who was going to be next. I didn't know if it would be Sebastian or Marcus. But there was, as I was writing Someday Away and as I finished it up, there was a lot of sparks between Fiona and Sebastian, and that just kind of dovetailed into the next book. So Marcus was always going to wrap things up. I didn't know it would be Jeremy from the beginning. He was initially like a minor side character in Someday Away, and when I wrote the scene with him and Trey at the bar in that book, I just knew immediately that Jeremy needed his own book because everybody loved him just from that one scene. So that just kind of turned into what it was.
Well, let's kind of dive into that first spark of Jeremy there. What really wanted you to dive so much into that character?
Well, I think that at least for Jeremy, he was the dynamic between him and Marcus is unusual because he's clueless for a long time. He doesn't realize his connection to Marcus. He thinks it's new and exciting, and that's kind of the extent of it for him. So for him, it's just a hot guy with a lot of issues who he's sexually drawn to. It's obviously different for Marcus. He's known Jeremy since they were kids. For Jeremy, the first chapter when he meets Marcus in a club, the sparks are instant, but really he fights how he feels because he doesn't understand why he's attracted to this guy who obviously has 1,000 red flags beyond being, physically attracted to him. So as they discover a bit more about how they actually know each other, then it becomes more complicated at that point.
Sometimes we're just drawn to the red flags.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So, what kind of reader do you think this grumpy meets sunshine dynamic speaks to the most?
So, I always kind of joke that my books are dark romance, but they're not too dark. And I think that Grumpy Sunshine in that vein is just kind of like a soft enemies to lovers trope, essentially. So this isn't a bully romance. It's not super dark, but it is about, Marcus, a character who struggles opening up about anything, and Jeremy, a character who's pretty much the opposite, wears his heart on his sleeve. And that juxtaposition speaks a lot to people, I think, who struggle with social norms and with expectations on how they should act. Especially when one's trying to be a people pleaser and one's trying to, keep all of his private stuff private. So, and then both characters deal with significant trauma. Marcus has a lot of generational trauma and there's a lot of personal trauma for Jeremy. So, I think that having that dynamic is something people just experience in real life.
Actually, just going right into that generational thing. Both characters deal with significant trauma. How do you balance that darkness with all the hot and spicy romance?
Well, the romance always comes first, especially with these two. It's about them and like how they react to each other. But I think their trauma shapes those reactions. So it's kind of a balance between like what they want, and both characters are constantly asking like what might happen if they push past, their issues and their fears and just allow themselves to be happy. But I mean, especially in this, climate, like I think that the romance is the most important part. And the trauma, while, it shapes who they are, it's hopefully kind of a secondary focus.
One of the key themes you're seeing here is invisible people. It's a major theme you see throughout. Why was it important to you to write, for those who feel invisible?
Well, for me, it was kind of a personal issue. I grew up with very extroverted stepbrothers. They were, a very overachieving but talented best friend. So I always kind of felt overlooked. Or kind of like the secondhand person in a conversation. I think a lot of people feel that way until they find their person, and we all kind of need and want someone who just sees you for who you are and loves you anyway, and doesn't make you feel invisible anymore. So even if it's just one person, I think that's important.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more on that one. That's for sure there. So kind of diving further into this with the mental health representation, specifically regarding self-harm, what was the hardest part about getting Jeremy's internal struggle right?
Jeremy was difficult for me, just because he self-harms. That's kind of his thing. And I have friends who have struggled with it, but I don't have any firsthand experience. So I had a close friend in an alpha reader who made sure I got it right, and I actually felt really bad after she read it because she of course knew the content ahead of time, but she said it made her super emotional, and she had to like call a friend who she used to call when she went through these issues, and it kind of brought her back to that time in her life, and I was apologizing profusely, like I'm so sorry that I did this to you, but she said that I did it right. She's like, there are people who will hate you for it, but the best thing you can do is just be really clear in your content warnings that it may be very triggering. So I think that I at least got, the right perspective to frame it in the correct, context.
Moving away from that happy topic, Marcus has a very rigid professional mask. What moment in the writing process really made that mask finally click and crack for you?
Well, his journey is kind of a long one. He holds a lot of guilt because of his relationship as the oldest sibling. He's the golden child. I actually think that his mask starts to crack as early as Someday Away, when he finally gets to have a real conversation with his stepsister, Charlie. But it's not until this book, which takes place 3 years later, that he's kind of realizes he's sick of masking, and he knows from experience that, people pleasing is exhausting. I know that from experience. So writing Marcus was sometimes really exhausting too, because that's all he wanted to do was like please everyone, from his dad to his siblings to Jeremy, to even like the people he considered friends. So and most of the time I just wanted to tell him to like let it go. And so when he finally did, I was really happy about it.
You know what? That's a perfect moment when you're writing too, where it's like, oh, there we go. There's that.
Yeah, it felt a lot better.
And then on the flip side of all this, you have Jeremy, who is a bratty switch. What did you most enjoy about using his personality to rile up Marcus?
Well, he's as he's described, he's a brat by nature, and I think that Marcus brings it out more than other people because he's so much the opposite. He's uptight, he struggles with being honest about his feelings. But like we kind of get a sample of Jeremy's snark in Some Day Away. We definitely see it in someone like me as well, in like the brief scenes that he has. And honestly, like he's just so much fun to write. Like his sarcasm, his sense of humor, they're a lot like my own. So I kind of find myself, just stupidly grinning every time he riled Marcus up because it just seemed like so natural writing his dialogue.
All right, so you mentioned in your afterword that you are a pantser. How did Marcus and Jeremy fight back against the original ideas you had for them?
Well, the problem was that I kept forgetting there was a villainous subplot going on. So when I initially wrote their story, like I wrote the entire romance and then realized I hadn't really added any of that underlying tension that I normally would with like the B plot essentially. Between Marcus and his father, between Marcus's father's business partner, like the actual villains of the story. So then I kind of had to go back because I was a pantser. I just kind of wrote as I was going, and then I had to go back and like add all of these different elements. So that actually made writing this story a bit harder because like I would go through it and be like, well, I think it's fine. And then my editor would be like, but I don't understand why the bad guy did this and didn't do this. And I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot he existed for a while. So it was like, this story would have really benefited from an outline for sure. I just don't have it in me to write an outline. So, but yeah, they took over the whole story. Like it was just about them and romance. And I mean, some people might've been fine with that, but it doesn't really it's not cohesive with my other two books. So I decided to listen to my editor and add a bit more of the subplot in there.
I know what that's like when they take over. It sucks.
Yeah.
All right. So did the mysteries involving Skynet and Ryan Michaels change dramatically as you were writing? Obviously, it did.
Yeah, it did. And going back to kind of what I just said, like on my first pass, I actually had Marcus's dad playing a much larger role as I guess as a villain with Ryan and Skynet. And but after I kind of talked with my editor, who, like I said, had a million unanswered questions about Ryan's motivation, I pretty much had to rewrite the whole thing. And then I had to rewrite it again. Those who have read Someone Like Me remember that Ryan Michaels is Brantley's dad. And in that book, I make it clear he's a very terrible human. And he was terrible in this book too. And most of it did share, some of the awfulness that Marcus has with his dad, but I ended up changing it so that it was so that he was just a bit more redeemable, whereas Ryan's definitely not. Like he was always a piece of shit. So I, at least, whereas Martin's just a terrible father, at least he's not a murderer,
Okay, so actually, before we jump into the other questions, just because I've been trying to remember to ask everyone, how many drafts did you go through on this one?
I mean, I think that I'm in the minority with the way that I write, because honestly, like, I really only have, I have my first draft, I send it to an alpha reader, and then I have my second draft, I send it to my editor, and then I have my third. And that's generally how I do all my books. I know a lot of writers have 20 drafts that they're 20 versions of their story that they're rewriting, but in general, I just rewrite after I get feedback. And the first draft, I'll go through it several times, but I don't really consider anything that I add to it or subtract from it to be a new draft in itself until I'm changing major plot points. So yeah, I guess I'm probably in the minority with the way I do that, but that's just how I do it.
All right, so you use a lot of 90s throwback and specific music cues. How does your personal playlist influence your prose?
Well, I kind of create the playlist as I write. Sometimes I'll just hear a song and it fits like whatever scene I'm working on. And I honestly, it drives my husband crazy because when I'm writing a book, that book's playlist is on repeat in the car, like all the time, over and over and over again. And it's not like it's a super long playlist. Like it's probably like, 25 songs or something. And it does tend to be really 90s heavy because that's what I listen to. And plus, alternative rock was just so angsty during that decade that it just like lends itself to dark romance, in my opinion. So yeah, I guess that's like the whole 90s media that throwbacks that I try and focus on as far as like movies and books and television shows and music. That all just kind of like comes together collectively, and it makes a good mix.
So coming to the end of this one and the trilogy, like the whole series in itself,
Yeah.
have you learned anything about yourself and your writing style coming to the end?
Well, I have gotten comments from beta readers that each book has gotten progressively better in its writing, so that's nice to hear. I don't really notice that. The main thing I learned from this book is writing 2 point of views is way easier than writing 3 point of views. So I felt like I started writing like in hard mode, like by doing poly romance. And I still feel like I'll write poly relationships, but dang, like 2 characters was so much more simple. And because I would write a poly relationship and suddenly my editor would be like, I can tell who your favorite is. Like it just shines out a little bit. So she's like, you gotta tone down like how you feel about him and like write a little more for this guy. And like, at least with the 2 of them, like I wasn't really picking, you can really tell I was picking favorites. It was a lot easier to write.
Okay, and there is something very special and interesting about the end of this book, which involves the other Sarah that is my favorite Sarah in the world, Sarah Burton, S.M.R. Burton. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you guys have cooking up?
Yeah, so one of the things that we always wanted to do was to do a crossover with our series. Like Nora is a character in her book, Making Shadows with Their Footprints, and she's like one of my favorite characters ever. I just love her. Her and James are just amazing together. And she also has similar passionate feelings about my characters. So we just decided that whereas her books take place on like a definite timeline, mine are a little more floaty. So we did have that advantage because in general, her characters are, having their adventures earlier in the 2000s, whereas mine are kind of taking place now. So Marcus was the easiest crossover to make because he was the oldest. So we ended up making him and Nora friends from the get-go. They meet, in a bar when he's 19 and she's a little bit older. And they kind of go from there and have their own kind of BFF relationship that starts out kind of intimate and then, kind of simmers down to just a really good platonic friendship. And so we kind of co-wrote, I wrote most of it, but I wrote the scene in this book where he actually meets up with Nora and James. And then Sarah wrote kind of a bonus chapter for the end of Marcus and Nora meeting back when he's 19. So it's a really fun crossover. I think it's a good way to kind of cross-promote our books. And, we both have very different writing styles too. So I think it's interesting to read her book and then read my chapter at the end of her book and then read my book and read her chapter at the end of my book and just kind of see how they fit together. It's been really fun.
It is so nice to see all of my friends working together. It's nice. I like it. I'm a big fan. Yeah. And I will second that with Nora being my favorite. Literally the character that got me into reading romance.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Before reading that book, I never even thought about reading romance, and now it had me in tears, man. I've talked about this before.
Sarah's very good. I always tell her, I'm like, because I'll edit some of her, or I edited her most recent version of Making Shadows with Their Footprints, and I was like, I have to pull back when I'm editing your stuff because she uses like so many descriptors, and like you can tell that she's got the poet in her, which is what she started doing before she was writing romance. And I'm like, I don't want to like dim that at all. And so like it's my editor brain wants to be like, well, there's a more concise way to say this, but at the same time, like she just says it so beautifully, like I can't bear to change it. So I really had to pull back with stuff like that, just because like her writing is just incredible.
Kind of pisses me off, really. Yeah. All right. Anyways, back to you. We're talking about you right now.
Right.
So now that this series is wrapped, what are you working on next?
Well, I do plan on doing a novella that wraps this series up, but it's really hard for me to get into. Because despite the fact that I really love all the characters, I like the angst that comes with them. Like that's the type of book I read too. And so cozy isn't really my jam. So writing like a specifically happy ever after, even if it's short, is going to be really challenging. But I'm going to try and get it out this year. We'll see what happens. After that though, I'm a little bit undecided. I've considered writing a few standalones before I slip into another like full series, probably some more evergreen type of books, maybe something based on a summer camp or a Halloween book, or some of those holiday, or the most the best holiday, which is Groundhog Day. So you never know what you're going. What is that not a thing?
Hold that back for a second. Why is Groundhog Day the best?
My husband and I, ever since we've been together, like we always watch Groundhog Day on Groundhog Day, and it's just a thing that we do. And now my son is into it too. So every Groundhog Day he goes into our room and he wakes us up with "I've Got You, Babe" by Sonny and Cher. And it's like this stupid tradition that we always do. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna write like a holiday series, I have to do one on Groundhog Day, especially if it's some sort of weird time loop.
I absolutely love that. That's beautiful. That is so good. Okay, yeah. We have a little bit of time left. We actually ran through all of the questions really fast. Very on point. It's a very on point interview, but we still got like 6 minutes left. So we're gonna ask a little rapid fire questions here.
Yeah.
That you have no idea what I'm about to ask, so you got to get right in there. Okay. Marcus has been following Jeremy in his periphery for like 20 years. Is this a story about the one that got away or the one that was always right there?
Probably the one that was always there, because they only have one real interaction until they're older. So Marcus, while it seems very stalkery of him, he's always running into Jeremy by coincidence. He always calls him, it's like serendipitous that it's like they meet in Canada Beach, and yet somehow they lived in the same hometown and they were in Vancouver at the same time. Like he just keeps like randomly running into this guy like it's fate, as Nora would say. And Marcus would disagree because Marcus doesn't believe in fate, Nora does. But yeah, so I think that he's really just supposed to be with him from the beginning. He just doesn't realize it. And certainly Jeremy doesn't either, because he didn't even know it was happening.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a brat does Jeremy have to be to break Marcus's professional mask?
Oh, not much. It doesn't take much, for sure. Just a little bit of snark and Marcus loses his shit. And I think that's because he's used to Charlie and Sebastian being like his only friends, and they're generally they're low on the snark scale. They're not pushing his buttons, he's the responsible older brother. So it's a different dynamic. I think he's just not used to having someone challenge him.
Where, without spoilers, what is the most scandalous location in the book?
Beach, probably.
I was gonna say either the dark hallway or the window overlooking Elliot Bay.
I mean, the dark hallway maybe, but I'm pretty sure that happens in lots of clubs, so.
I mean, we got Nora, so yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
We all know that. Seriously, that was my favorite. Anyways.
It was a good scene. It was a really good scene.
Marcus is a wealthy businessman. If he wasn't running a empire, would he actually be a full-time pottery nerd?
Oh, totally. I think that's like Sarah kept saying. I think that it's hilarious that you ended up putting his pottery studio literally in a closet, just like his sexuality, that he had to come out of and actually accept that this was part of him. So yeah, I think that if he could have his way, he'd be like in the Ryan Gosling sweater from Hail Mary, just like with his slutty little glasses on, doing his pottery, and that would just be his life if he could have it that way. But he wasn't raised like that, so it takes a lot to get there.
The only thing that's going to stick out are the slutty little sunglasses.
Yeah, exactly, the slutty little.
See, I want a pair of slutty. Anyways, all right. So let's see, where was I? Okay, this is a dark romance. What is the bigger threat to their happily ever after? The narcissistic father or the psychopath business partner?
That one's hard. I actually think it'd be the business partner, just because he presents more of a bodily harm element. He's unpredictable. He's a bit volatile as far as like what he's going to do and how he's going to react to stuff. And I think that puts Jeremy's life in danger versus with Martin, it's more like, it's more like he's holding his advantage over his siblings hostage per se, like Marcus's siblings. So it's different stakes. Whereas one can probably be fixed, one is permanent because that's death. So.
Readers love an interconnected world. How much of a spoiler is this book for fans who have not yet finished Someday Away or Someone Like Me?
Scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 5. I market them as standalones because they can be read as standalones. I think they're more fun together. Definitely in this book, there's a directly overlapping scene from Someone Like Me that probably, it doesn't give away like the biggest plot twist, but it kind of lets them know what direction things are going. And there are mentions of things that happen at the end of Someday Away. So if you want to be surprised for the first two, I recommend them. I always recommend them first, but it certainly isn't necessary if you just want to start with Marcus and Jeremy. Like, I totally understand. They've slowly become my favorite characters. So.
Beautiful. And then I guess the most important question is, where can people find you and the book?
Well, I'm on social media as Sarah Elisabeth author, all one word. My books are in ebook and paperback on Amazon. Right now I'm on Kindle Unlimited. In the next 6 months, I'm going to reassess what I want to do with that. I may go wide. I'm not really sure. But I feel like I have a lot more Canadian readers now, and I know Kobo and Kobo Plus is big over there. So I would rather, I might try it out, give it a shot. Of course, I'd warn readers before I take it off, but at this point, like, the more indie authors I've talked to, they're like, yeah, it takes like maybe a year to give it 6 months or a year, but eventually, like, I don't regret it. So it would be nice to not be beholden to the evil Zahn.
Beautiful. All right, and that kind of puts us almost at the exact time. Huge thank you to Sara Elisabeth for joining me to chat about So I'll Know. You can find the entire Pacific Northwest Boy series on Amazon or at saraelisabethauthor.com, and you can follow her on all the social medias, as she just said. All the links will be down in the description below. This episode is in part thanks to House of Void Press, which is an amazing place for all indie authors to really help and get a whole bunch of things, and they're growing into something really fantastic and beautiful. And
I know,
check it out.
So excited to be part of it.
Don't forget to go and support all indie authors out there. There's some amazing stuff that people are overlooking because they're not part of the big corporate web. Anyways, I'm rambling. My name is Chris Corvan. You can find me everywhere at Chris of the Void. This has been another Let's Chat, part of Dripping Creativity Podcast. And until next time, stay creative, stay inspired, and I'll see you later.